All right, all right. Now, if I've done my tech setup correctly, which I think I have, we should be live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. There may not be anyone here because this is my first live stream across any platform, really. I'm usually used to doing pre-recorded content that then, folds into everything else. And I've been learning the tech slowly over the last couple of weeks, which is really interesting. And now I can hear myself. There you go. That means I've done it correctly. So excellent. I know there will be a delay between platforms. So one thing I've learned when doing the tech is that YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn have different latencies. This is almost step for step on Twitch. So if you want to see the quickest content, then go over to Twitch. But if you're on LinkedIn, there'll probably be a minute delay from when I'm talking and when I might be able to see you guys. So I'm just going to give you a heads up on that one, as it's actually quite interesting trying to keep up with all this stuff. I have like a multi-monitor setup as well, so I'm currently trying to make sure I can see the chat that might come through on my side, as well as just kind of chat to everyone and make sure everyone can actually join the stream, which is excellent. But again, thank you for everyone for being here. This show is going to be a regular thing I want to do to make sure I can just live stream my thoughts, what I can see happening in the general world of, social media in general, and to give everyone some background, because new viewers, new stream watchers, all that kind of stuff, they might not be familiar with who I am. So let me start there. Hi, I'm James. I run a creative group here in Hampshire, in the UK, called the Straw Hat Group. It has three main components. It has a consulting angle, a physical podcast studio, and a social media agency, all wrapped in one creative group. My goal is to help shepherd all companies, brands, personal brands, creators through the new shifts in social that we're seeing, and just kind of helping you guys navigate the waters, because honestly, it's not easy. There is so much going on. There's so much, to change and react to and all that kind of stuff, that it can be really difficult to navigate, especially because we have a particular focus on organic social. So anything you can do for free is what we specialize in. So that is where you need to think about. That's where you need to be, because what I've noticed is companies constantly ignore their organic baseline. Now, what do I mean by that? All the stuff you can post for free, the stuff that is constantly being put out there in the world by content creators that you are getting outpaced by. And to track back a little bit to my origin story, I guess, I have at least 10 years in marketing, I think. It's getting old now. And I have been both in-house, agency side, and worked on a multitude of brands from HSBC, Samsung, EE, Barclays, American Express, Global Business Travel, both in my own agency, but also working for others. And I've done it in basically every department as well. So I've worked in kind of traditional ad centers, TV, radio, print, but I've also worked in experiential marketing, more localized marketing, and SEO and web. But the thing that I found the most interesting out of all of that journey is there seems to be a strange, I would say, ignorance or ignoring, I guess, of organic social media. And that's just stuff you can post for free, and I have no idea why, if I'm completely honest with you. There are kids in their bedrooms with setup like mine, or actually probably not as good as this one, because I've cheated. I've got the agency kit that I've bought over the years I can use to do this stuff. There are kids in their bedrooms kicking the ass of multinational corporations on a daily basis, and I honestly can't wrap my head around why those techniques weren't implemented. And that was the catalyst for starting my first business. So that was Shogun Social. That was a social media agency dedicated to helping businesses post more like content creators. That was the whole shtick. And I learned a lot during that time. I ran that agency for probably about 4 or 5 years. And now I've pivoted into a wider network of things. Hence why we now have an overall creative group instead of just an agency. Because we needed to add more strings to our bow and adapt to the AI era, which I'm sure we're all feeling. And partly what I set this live stream up to do today is essentially to cover those things. Look at how AI is affecting your businesses, and personal brands, and also you guys as creators as well, because I'm open to helping pretty much anyone, especially with my content. And my main theory is that I'm calling it the Great Shift. and it sounds very over the top and dramatic, hence got to get the clicks. And the great shift is ultimately going to be really, really simple. It is going to be a case of, right, cool, social media is the way it is, AI is going to keep rising and rising and rising. And there's going to be this click, there's going to be this come to Jesus moment where brands are going to realise that all the money that they spend often in offline mediums or things like TV, radio, print, if they spent even a quarter of that spend on organic brand building, specifically video first organic brand building, and did that over a couple of years' time, they'd be in a humongously better place than they would be otherwise. And brands are so often caught in what I call the culture of campaigns. They look at especially social media as an in versus out. It is, right, I'm going to stick X amount of ad spend on, I'm going to get X amount back, therefore anything we do on the organic side is essentially a waste of time. What's the point in even focusing on it? And that's where I step in to go, whoa, hold up, pubs, hold on. That is not how things operate now. And there is a wealth of information that content creators themselves are putting out there to pave the way for us. And my prediction is the great shift will be the moment where brands realise that they can do this too. And it's essentially what I set up in my overall creative group. So we work with businesses from all over, specifically for B2B, gym franchises, veterinary practices, medical practices. It's all over the shop in terms of who we actually work with, and B2B tech as well. And from that, I've realised that every single brand, every kind of person can essentially get a series of their own. They can have what I call a content vehicle to push them forward. And I'll go into a little bit more about what that means. But I just want to make sure that we also focus on the important point of how important content creators are to the world we live in at the moment. Now, they've gone through a couple of phases, I guess. You call them influencers, you call them content creators. But I just want to set the scene. Angry Ginge. Who's familiar with Angry Ginge? You lot might be familiar with him. For lack of a better term, he is a Twitch streamer and YouTuber who just won I'm a Celeb. Probably by quite a large margin, right? And he's probably the most famous person in I'm a Celeb this year. That's a crazy world to live in. And I'm not sure we're really focused on it. The previous year, I think it was last year, or maybe earlier this year, who knows, the American election could have been single-handedly influenced/decided by one episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. 3 hours worth of organic exposure with someone that had built an intensely loyal brand and was interviewing the president and didn't interview the other candidate in, I don't even remember her name now, that's how irrelevant she's ended up becoming. For good or bad, and this is politics neutral, it's mainly about the point that a podcaster had a heavy influence or could have decided an election because of how much airtime he gave to one candidate over another. Content creators are becoming kingmakers. Content itself is currency. And if we're not starting to really latch on to these things, if we're really not at a stage where we're understanding how important this is, we're going to be super, super far left behind. And brands need to twig onto that fact ipso facto right now and look at social through a completely different lens, an organic lens, because I feel like a lot of us have been putting off that work we know we need to. Social media is an extremely intimidating and long-winded activity you build over a long period of time. And it happens to me. I've been extremely inconsistent with my personal brand. Anyone who knows from my content years and years ago, I was talking about things like the parasocial connection, which for anyone who doesn't know is the general theory that human beings can't really tell the difference subconsciously between conversations through a screen and conversations in person. So whether or not I've had this same conversation with you in person or through this camera right now, your brain's going to interpret it the same way if we ever bumped into each other next week. Right, that is a incredible piece of data that you'll never be able to track, but it has a massive impact if you are a video first brand, a video first creator, a personal brand, whatever it happens to be. That doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but that forms connections with individuals. So your content you could post daily, and if in your mind it could be underperforming, but it doesn't matter because that subtle parasocial effect has happened over time. But to get back on track, brands need to get get a hold of this. They need to start creating those parasocial connections with people, because we've been putting off that work we know we need to do to get our brands to where they need to be. It's a very simple equation in my head. I did a talk last week on the future of podcasting, and the future of podcasting is intrinsically linked in with the future of wider social media. And I talked about this phenomenon where, content creators are, crowning presidents, and you can just turn on a Twitch stream in your bedroom and there are people streaming 8 hours a day, and most people think that is associated with only gamers, but it's not. We might be able to touch on that later, but for lack of a better term, we really need to get a handle on it. We need to start really focusing on our own brands, and that's what I'm here to help with today. I have a list of things I'm going to talk about, but I wanted to set the scene up. That is my prediction. That's what I think the great shift is that brands will eventually go, aha, maybe we can do a vlog as a B2B tech company. Maybe we can do a podcast series that isn't just so analytical, because I think a lot of brands are really scared to step outside of their lane because it's not our target audience. One of the fundamental factors that has made it so content creators are essentially taking over the world is the fact that everything is an interest-based algorithm. With the exceptions of some platforms like Blue Sky or platforms that might give you a little bit of control over what you see, you are essentially beholden to the algorithm. You are going to be suggested content, which everything on social media is interest-based, not intent-based. So you cannot treat it like we used to treat it. It used to be whoever follows you, get you following up. Your following means more people engage, more people spend, more people make money. It's just not how it works anymore. You can have 0 followers and get exposure to hundreds of thousands of people. I have a perfect example of this. I have a podcast called PBZ TV. It's on YouTube. We have 20 subscribers. We've only really just started it. I think we're just under 30 episodes. And we have, in terms of overall viewership, if you count across YouTube Shorts and our mid-sized clips and our longer clips, we are going quite hard on this, we probably have 20,000, 30,000 views across the board on a podcast that's just started, that's underneath the magical kind of 50 episodes mark. And that's what's fascinating about it. That opportunity is wide open. I mean wide open, right? Because it presents a unique opportunity. It may be annoying for those brands that have worked hard to already have a big following, but if anything, that's just going to help you get pushed in the algorithm than anything else. But every brand that might be sat there going, well, that's not for me. I sell in industrial supplies or glue, or I am a B2B brand. I couldn't possibly be seen doing this. Or I'm a law firm and there's no way that I could ever, jump on it and think that I actually have a place on these platforms. Well, you do, because everyone does. And it doesn't matter what amount of followers you start with. The exposure to new people is essentially what video is for. And that's what I think a lot of us haven't really clocked onto. In creator culture right now, there are Twitch streamers who are leading the way. Hence why I'm actually streaming on Twitch for you guys who might have seen it over there. I'm making sure that it's actually a viable option, because Twitch is leading the way in terms of culture. And when culture comes from a particular source, so far it's actually been TikTok, but Twitch streamers and TikTokers are leading the way for everyone else. So Twitch streamers are essentially completely connected to YouTube. So it almost works like a bit of an ecosystem where you'll have a creator that will be a live streamer who will then take clips from that and put it on their YouTube channel and create other videos on the YouTube channel to monetize and then further grow their live Twitch viewers. They'll then use platforms like Instagram and TikTok as viewership drivers to those particular sources, right? This is where we need to get to as brands. If you do not have some kind of a vehicle, like a live stream, a podcast, a vlog series, talking head videos individually, right? If you don't have a vehicle to drive you forward, you are, what the kids would say, cooked. Because then social media is a massive struggle. Either it becomes way too corporate, you have to create loads of graphics, get so many stuff approved, and it's just a massive, lack of a better term, ball ache, right? It is a ball ache. And that's what I need brands to understand. I really want them to get their head around the fact that in 2026 and going forward, they need to create original series that aren't just trend hops, that, or even just getting started in general, so they can have vehicles in which to clip farm themselves. And you guys might have heard the term clip farming. Clip farming is essentially, it's kind of got it in the name. You create something like a live stream and you might act super over the top, or you might act, in a funny way, or start altercations for a laugh. This is what happens more on the Twitch side, not on the brand side. And people will clip farm themselves because they know that that's a banger moment. Because everything has come back to that. That's a banger moment. That's a really good moment. And you start thinking, if I'm thinking of in another example, you think like a journalist. Where's my headline? And it's the modern version of the journalistic mindset, which is what organic social has turned into. So social media does not really need to be complicated in its current form, I guess you could say. Social media is really simple if you have the vehicle set up to do so, and you focus on the people within your organization. And this is how often we end up specializing in, not B2B per se, but it's more companies that have people at the heart of what they do, which is what every company will say on every values page, most likely. But for lack of a better term, that's the third time I've said that. This is going to be me picking up my streamer habits. But yeah, we focus mainly with those kind of companies, mainly because we use internal staff members as the subjects of videos. Now, that might scare the living hell out of some of you, probably will, but ultimately it's probably the only sustainable way for brands to ever be able to make constant ongoing series without it being a massive pain, because you need to put the focus in on your own people for a start. That's one thing, but also you need to make sure that you can have a vehicle you can do consistently. Going back to the culture of campaigns, the reason brands get caught in it, and I think campaigns are a bad thing on the organic social side, is because brands already are at an all-time low in terms of trust. And I'm talking low, right? If we continue to just carry on in kind of very obvious corporate ways, and it's not to say it's a bad thing, it's just what we're used to, it's like we've been found out. And this especially happens on TikTok. You come in with a corporate mindset on TikTok, they won't engage with you. They won't even look at you sideways. And we need to change how we operate on there. So having a content series that isn't all about selling is actually what you need to sell more. Doing organic social well is unlearning the habits that got you where you need to be, that got you where you were. And I'm going to take a pause because I've just had a question in from Adibola. Love you hosting this. Thank you. I've been meaning to ask this. How long should someone test content strategy before deciding if it's working or not? Now, that is always going to be a custom fit answer, right? This completely depends on how it's going. I usually look, and if I'm looking at how I'd answer this question for clients, we look at monthly and quarterly analytic cycles. And that's if you have the kind of content vehicle thing set up in the first place. So if we take a look at, let's say, if you've got a consistent Monday to Friday schedule, you're posting 20 times per month over it, Monday to Friday, and you don't post on weekends, and you're kind of a typical B2B cycle. If you're doing it that way, looking at it in that long form allows you to see what is working and what isn't. So we work in a very common method, so content, we call them content pockets, other people call them content pillars, but for lack of a better terminology, that's the fourth time I've said that, I've got to keep track. But what we end up doing is we go, cool, which series works and which series do not. We keep them easily interchangeable from Monday to Friday, but with the intent is that we stay consistent for a particular strategy for at least a month at a time to see what's effective. Now, there are going to be things in your content strategy that are going to be what I call viewership loss leaders. Not everything has the potential to go viral, but you need some things to lock in your messaging priority and actually so people know what you do. For instance, let's take the podcast studio. So I own Hampshire Podcast Studios. We reshare lots of the clips that come out from people actually filming in the studio, which is literally just over there. And I always say to the team, I need to start making some what I call quote unquote classic boring stuff to let people know just how much the packages are and where they can find them and what they entail, right? That is not going to go viral. If I make a graphic saying what I do as a business, it's not going anywhere. It's just not. But what it will do is make sure that when someone looks at it, first time seeing a page, let's say they've seen a clip from something you've done, they've come and looked at the overall page, and now they get to figure out what on earth and who you are. That is when conversion content comes into the mix. But I don't want it to be everything. So once or twice a week, your boring conversion content needs to be there, and it always needs to stay there in some shape or form. You can't just do everything just to push views, unless you're a content creator, of course. But as businesses, you do almost have to make a sacrifice here or there. So, but then my answer to that would be then, if you've got 2 slots of the week that aren't going to be focused on, let's say, that aren't going to be focused on, overall value, we go, okay, cool, I'm going to post 7 times a week so I can still have 5 days a week of good stuff I can invest, and then the 2 days are like, here's what we actually do, just type content. So I hope that kind of answers the question. Monthly or quarterly cycles to test whether your strategy is working. Make sure that strategy is video first from the get-go, and you have an easy vehicle to create content going forward. So vlogs, YouTube channels, podcast, I don't really mind what it is, as long as it's easily clippable and you can make it clippable for vertical clips. So for instance, this is a landscape setup. I very rarely do anything in landscape. If you look at any of my content on my page, it is basically just going to be constantly vertical. And the reason that is because every platform has vertical video discovery engines. So there's honestly no point doing anything in landscape unless it's for a YouTube channel or a website. And live streams, because they'll just come out this way anyway. I do use the software I've even used to kind of make this happen and have this little overlay here. It's called Meld Studios. It is an alternative to what streamers would use. So for instance, there's OBS is another one, and Restream is also another one you can look at if you guys ever wanted to do live streams as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. It's definitely something to look at, but make sure you have something consistent you can do. Another question from Rabia. This is great. AI is everywhere right now. What are some effective ways you're seeing brands use AI in their social media and branding, and where should we look, and where should they absolutely avoid it? Brilliant question. Everyone has different takes on this and their appetite to AI. I don't have a high tolerance for AI nonsense, to be honest. We've all heard the term AI slop. I talked about this in my talk last week, where it is essentially, it's for me, it's spam. It's, for those who don't like swearing, I apologise in advance. It's shit posting, is what it is. If I see a brand do an all AI ad, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. All the creativity is flowing out the window. What is the point? Why would you do that? I think there's a big difference between AI-assisted content and AI slop, right? Is the terminology. So I would definitely encourage brands to avoid AI slop at all costs, just stuff that's completely auto-generated, and embrace tools on the AI side that can help you distribute lots of content. Just to give you a stat to shock, on average, I think it's 71% of the social, just the graphics and images online right now are AI generated. So that's scary and disgusting, but it also kind of brings up dead internet theory, if you guys are familiar with this. One of my favourite posts ever is essentially someone who theorised that with the rise of bots, and this is before AI turned up, someone wrote this in an internet cafe back in the early 2000s, with the rise of bots and automation and AI, the internet will essentially become so populated by things that humans didn't create that it's essentially going to be a snake that eats its own tail. Robots will be interacting with robots, and it's a quite scary prospect, to be honest, that we'll end up in a place where you cannot tell what is human, and it's all going to feel very samey, and the robots are interacting with the robots. You'll see this a lot in comment sections. I'd say TikTok, it happens a lot, and Facebook happens a lot. You can tell the bot armies come out in force. This happens a lot in the political realm. Not sure what's going on there. Probably engagement farms from foreign entities is my guess. But in general, we're at a real big saturation point, which is why 2026, I think this great shift will happen with brands. Because if brands start to see the influx of AI content, they're going to drown in it. You know, if I've got a B2B brand that sells notepads, right? We sell notepads, but we sell these specific like techie ones, and we only sell them to businesses or something. Super niche topic, really niche. Okay, cool. What do I do now? Because there's an AI Yeti vlog there. The Queen's just jumped off the top rope in an AI video. What am I going to do now? How can I compete with that? Because it's all the same algorithm. You know, the algo's gonna go, James, what are you into? I'm into anime, I'm into basketball, and also business and marketing. So how do I wrap this up into all in one thing? And how do I prioritize? Because he also likes memes too. So, and he likes memes more often, so I'm probably just going to flood the zone with memes and basketball and stuff like that, even though, you know, B2B would have been an interest, but you've got no choice but to fight against that. So your content has to be interesting, it has to be authentic, it has to be human, otherwise you're cooked. you're gonna lose against a robot, essentially. So how do you get around that? It's embracing your humanity, allowing yourself to put your hair down a little bit and not be as corporate, for God's sake. There's just a massive problem with us clinging on to a sense of professionalism that almost doesn't exist. We live in a world where perception has essentially become reality, and authenticity and trust has replaced facts. I don't think it should be the place we are, politically, but it kind of is. So what do we do in that sense? And what we do is make sure we be ourselves consistently, because the market doesn't have you yet. You know, there's probably loads of people that have said what I've said, but can they articulate in the way I articulate it? Can they have fun with it while they have a chat? You know, this doesn't have to be, I'm the best speaker of all time and I'm the greatest. It's not what this is about. What it is about is making sure that you have a constant platform and a vehicle to hit home your message consistently, that isn't just being eaten up by AI slop. So, yes, as a long-winded answer, that is what we need to be focused on. Look at AI-assisted content, not just leaning into the trap of AI slop, because I can't tell you how much content of it I see on LinkedIn. It's my big bugbear. My hot take on LinkedIn is that LinkedIn's content is 80% majority, like 2010 Facebook, and sometimes it makes me throw up in my mouth, but that's just the way it is. And you can play that game and be like, here's what my marriage taught me about B2B sales. No, please don't. But as long as you're yourself and you attract people that are similar to you, you're going to win. So I'd lean into that. Carlton, what's up, my man? Glad you agree on the AI point. What do you think is missing in marketing 2026? Nice podcast plug, mate. Nice podcast plug. If anyone has seen Carlton's content, he runs a podcast called What's Missing in Marketing. Really good stuff. On one of the episodes, so check that out. It's a tricky one, what's missing in marketing. I think a lot of what I've been talking about here, to be honest. So brands having a consistent organic series that they are always going back to. So whether that's vlogs, podcasts, something like that. I don't think enough brands really invest in an organic baseline to get them to where they need to be, and then add their various seasonal campaigns or whatever on top of that activity. I can't tell you how many blue chip stock brands, for instance, have YouTube channels that just host their TV ads. I cannot think of a bigger waste of potential in my life for a brand that has the name recognition to instantly get hundreds of thousands of subscribers if they really went in. They just don't. So I think brands having YouTube channels that they take seriously, that are driven by the people from within the organization, I think that's absolutely going to be the answer of what's missing in marketing, a focus on YouTube being a base. And I'd probably recommend that for the majority of people, to be honest with you, that, you know, in my strategy now, I'll lay everything out for you in terms of what I'm actually going to be doing. I'm setting up not just one vehicle, but multiple vehicles for myself to get from A to B. So this is why I don't mind. Like my live stream right now, a Twitch account, I have no one on Twitch. I have a fresh YouTube channel, so no one on YouTube will see this. But I have 4 people on LinkedIn, so shouts out to those 4 chatters on LinkedIn. I don't care if I speak to no one this entire year, because what my focus will be is finding my best moments from this hour and finding at least 5 to 10 great moments from it. Absolutely. It would just be bang, 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 bang. So I've got live streams as one vehicle to get me to where I need to be. The second is probably reviving my individual podcast called The Authenticity Hour, but having that as something where I do that occasionally when I can really get hold of heavy hitters. So that is another vehicle. That's an ad hoc or monthly vehicle, probably. The next step will be an individual YouTube channel that focuses on bringing in the personal with the business. So as the observant of you might be able to tell, I need to lose a few pounds, okay? I got to shift it, but I also got to find a way to make more money for my business, more revenue, like we all do. You just want to push it forward. So I want to combine those two things. How do I document and create a video series from my attempted weight loss journey at the same time as making marketing and social media content or anything else? So that's going to be one of my goals. Whether it be my first idea is to have, to shoot around on a basketball court, because I'm a big basketball fan, and answer questions popular on the web and AI about social media and what my take is on them, so I can help as many people as possible. Probably alongside helping people like marketing students get jobs in 2026, because it is a devilishly tough market, and I want to make sure we can help as many people as possible. And also, there's probably a good talent attractor for me going forward if I consistently have a way to reach out to students, right? So there is a HR function to this as well, so keep that in mind. So that's a third vehicle. And then the fourth vehicle will probably just be individual YouTube videos, either in this setup or in the studio setup that we have over there. Not to mention that I already have two podcasts, one that's more marketing and memes focused, and the other one is just full personal brand. It's personal stories, it's TV, radio, TV, sports and movies and the NBA, all that kind of stuff. So I have like almost 4 or 5 vehicles, which isn't normal, by the way. I don't expect people to have all of the time to create that kind of content, but one of the things it is going to be useful for is I can clip farm from multiple locations, and not all of them have to be daily or weekly, because I have more than one source to pull from. And as long as I can stay consistent from that, that's how I'll win, in theory. So yes. And Carlton with another chat there is right. People don't like spending money, but you need to build a brand. And it's true. But this is why I keep coming back to the organic foundations and having your own content vehicles. You don't need me to make any of this. This is like, although I have a nicer webcam because it's just stuff we bought from the agency, this microphone is 30 quid from Amazon, and I'm in the free software, and I'm posting for free on LinkedIn. This is all it's going to be. The YouTube channel is free. The podcasting is free. Yes, I own a studio, but you can do it virtually here using software like Riverside FM or StreamYard or Restream, right? The potential for it is endless. So as long as you can find a good angle on different series, again, putting your journalist hat on there and go, what's my headline? How can I go after this or that or whatever? And kind of come up with a series. And if that series doesn't pan out over a couple of months, I'll just change it to something else. Think like a YouTuber, think like a Twitch streamer. How can I double down on something that I think will work? And if I can do that, I'll win. So happy days. And I think that's what we all need to do, because that is organic, that is free. We can build that baseline. When next time we put out something that is to do with what we do for our business, guess what? It does better. Because when you actually build trust, build a real community, be seen to invest in the people that follow you and might buy from your brand, you win. You win every single time. So that is going to be 100% my tip on that one, in terms of you don't actually need money to do any of this at all. I just happen to be a bit of a cheat code now. I have a few bits knocking about, but again, I do not have the best setup whatsoever. I've got 2 fairly mid lights there. I'm no Twitch streamer yet, but I think I want to introduce it into something that can be really, really useful. And thank you, mate. It's getting good praise on the ideas. So shouts out to Carlton in the chat. Another thing I wanted to touch on was essentially the importance of KPIs. What KPIs are actually important now in organic social? What should we be tracking? And how should we be looking at it? Astute among you will probably have figured out that it's going to be video related, and it is going to be views. Views and viewer retention are my 2 most important statistics right now in the organic social world. That is if you are creating video. There are a couple under that though, which I then prioritize afterwards, and it's shares, saves and comments. right? If you can really nail your shares, saves, and comments, because those are the things that human beings usually have to go out of their way to do. So good I'm coming back for later. It's so good I'm sending it to a friend. It's so good I'm actually going to use my own hands to make stuff with. So if you can evoke emotion with what you create, then you're going to win on that side of things. Okay, so that's 100% one of the things I do. But before you even get to the tracking KPIs point, you have to be in the right mindset. So starting off with that, thinking like a journalist, thinking like a content creator. What's the angle? Where can I give the value? Where's the clip? Where, thinking about all of those in tandem. And then the other filter to put it in is go, right, does it educate, inspire, or entertain? If it's not one of those three, do I want it? Like, honestly. Because the internet is ruthless. You're in an infinite sea of new content over and over again. And if it's not worth someone's time, they ain't going to stick around. So you've got to give them something. You've got to give them a little snippet, but you have to do it in your style. I don't want brands to go out there pretending to be some kind of like savant or trying to be a Twitch streamer and they're just so over the top and inauthentic. That is just going to come across so poorly. But what will come across well is you doubling down on your style. For instance, if you do have more of a cerebral, slow style that draws people in with every word, then do that, leverage that. That is 100% where you need to be at. So you just got to double down on what works for you and what you want to be doing in life. The other thing to look at is not just what you are going to do from a content perspective, but what you want to be known for. So from a brand perspective, you think it's obviously quite easy. Shouts out, Carlton. Yes, we can definitely book something in. So hell yeah. But yeah, what do you want to be known for? And this is more specifically on the content angle. So let's say, again, if I'm looking at my creative group, right, you have to go back to your classic mission, vision, values to figure out where we want to actually be. What do we want to be known for? For me, I want the Straw Hat Group to be known as the company that is ushering forward this new age, this great shift in social, building great organic brands with original content for some of the biggest brands in the world. That's what I want us to be doing again. And I want the studio part of our business to be an easily accessible point for small businesses to be able to come in and create those content vehicles. Because we have people that come in our studio that make YouTube videos, podcasts, and shorts. We do all three because it's set up in a way that is just rough and ready to go, hit go, boom, that's there. I'm going to give my value. So you have to make it really, really easy for yourself, and then kind of go forward from there. But you need to have a really clear goal. So go back to what that overall mission is, and make sure you double down on that mission because it's 100% worth it. There are a couple of streamers and creators you guys 100% need to be focusing on as well. The first one is a whole set of Twitch streamers out the States. Kai Cenat, Agent Zero, Ludwig are probably the first three. So Ludwig does all kinds of streams. He does quite big events. He'll do kind of gaming streams. A lot of these guys revolve around gaming, but also do in real IRL or in real life streams, which are actually incredible tech setups, by the way. If you ever really look into the back of it, they've got like backpacks with essentially radio broadcast tech that's all weaved in between them. It's incredible tech and how it works. But in general, they are masters of the craft of how they've mastered the flow between Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok as distribution networks for everything that they do. We've probably seen clips of Kai Cenat. He's the biggest Twitch streamer on the planet. So and he goes back and forth with a VTuber or a virtual streamer called Iron Mouse. So again, there's a whole culture that we're not quite tapped into enough as brands and businesses that we really need to be focused on, because they are paving the way in terms of distribution. I guarantee you the views that these guys and gals would get would melt your brain in terms of the exposure that you are paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for. And yes, they have spent, some of them, over a decade building these audiences, slogging away in their bedroom to get to where that point is. But there's always a certain amount of spend allotted to social media and marketing departments that you're losing every year anyway. if you just took a chunk of that and gave it to one or two really dedicated individuals to build a real content and social empire for yourself, you'd be in a different stratosphere. Or of course you can bring on someone like us to help us with it, but just in general, you'd be in a completely different stratosphere if you could really double down on that consistency. So do keep it in mind in terms of what you're going to do for 2026 and beyond, and also what else you want this show to cover. Because I want this to be, I think I set this up on Friday, so not many of you guys had a good chance to actually put in questions or knew what I was going to talk about. But in general, I think I'm going to start using this show, one, to kind of do top level lectures and things like this, I guess, if you can call this a lecture. I will also be doing things like covering news stories, which will be a really, really cool thing to do, because there is a lot actually happening in the world of social at the moment that is just useful to know from an output point of view. So let's take what's happened over on Instagram. So if we head over to my next screen over here, so hopefully that's all worked for you guys. I will be able to kind of like look through and react to different things, but you can now reshare public stories on Instagram. Now, you guys might have seen this where you'll go on a story and you'll feel a little vibration to know that someone's reshared it. This may seem like a small update, but actually this could be really impactful, especially for the e-commerce sector, especially for, again, creators, and for any of us who are actually creating something that is shareable. And this goes back to the point of, is your content shareable enough to even warrant stuff like this, right? So it's an important thing to think about in terms of a story strategy, because how many times have you really sat down and thought about a real strategy, a story strategy, sorry? It's not often. Usually you just put up whatever post you've posted that day to stories, if you think about stories at all. Now, I'm a big hypocrite. I'm quite bad with stories, to be honest. I really don't focus on it too much. But in general, that is something we need to absolutely be paying attention to in terms of just these little updates that make the big difference. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. There are other stories as well to cover on this side of things. Obviously, there is the controversial new one of Australia banning social media for under 16s. I'm actually on side of it, to be honest. I grew up without social media for the majority of my childhood, I think, but like a lot of us did, and I'm still alive. But it is a big debate in terms of what social interactions now, because it's drastically changed. Like, realistically, how much can we really expect them to be non-social in a completely social world? It's a tough one. But I think it's actually probably going to be better, and I'm looking to Australia as the test case, because we won't know how effective this is until a few years down the line. This is what's frustrating about it. It's like the ban that Labour brought in recently on adult content, and you have to verify your age and stuff like that. There's so many ways around that people have found that they've almost found it just pointless, and it's just inconveniencing the populace. But at the same time, I think it's genuinely, I know it comes from a good place, but I don't think it's been implemented well at all. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that I just don't think it's gone that well in terms of how it's done. But I think looking to Australia, I think they've done well here. So big shouts out to that. Let's have a look what else is on the top headlines here. And also, I should check the chat for additional questions, because I haven't done that in a hot min. To give some real numbers on this, Carlton dropping the knowledge again. We give you 2x over turnover over 90% of the year. All right, damn. Yeah, go check out Carlton for the numbers on how content can turn the business around, because that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. Another here we go. So here was an interesting one I saw the other day. So this is a stat look at, I guess, if we jump in on this a little bit. Can I not zoom in? Okay. Either way, the majority of teens continue to use YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. This was a major focus on my talk the other day, which was essentially surrounding how YouTube has become the new TV. Right, it is the most used app on any television, I think, globally, and accounts for, I think it's like 22% of the usage of TV, then follows Netflix, then follows regular television. So this is another catalyst of the great shift, is that When every brand realizes that if they just take a fraction of spend they spend on more old school activities, move it over to YouTube is the new TV. So the potential they have to change the game and get in on this, what I think is going to be the next gold rush of content. And I don't particularly think it's a gold rush. I think it's just going to be a remembering that they should have done this type thing. I don't think a lot of big brands have excuses for this. I just think it's so hard to justify on a stat sheet that when you're in-house and you are talking to someone who's not that savvy on social media, you have to show the X's and O's to win that person over. But it's what I want my role to be, is to be able to go into boards and senior leadership to be like, hey, you guys really aren't thinking this through. You know, the actual ROI on this is bigger than you think, and it's not everything shows up on the stat sheet when it comes to this stuff, right? So you have to change your viewpoint a little bit on how it works. And when we usually join organizations, especially B2B ones, we come in and we do a talk called Understanding Native Social, where I kind of go through a lot of what we talked about in this talk today, and I go, cool, right, here's how we need to think. We need to think like content creators. We need to build a real community. We need to lock in on being educational, inspirational, entertaining, and on an organic perspective, really have a content vehicle to get us from A to B, and then just consistently distribute that for a certain amount of time and iterate that based on audience feedback, right? Then that is how we need to think about organic. Paid and performance marketing are in completely separate lanes. So it's something to bring back again, is that, you know, they are different things. But often the performance marketing mindset is smashed onto organic social, when organic social doesn't have the tools for attribution. All it has is you can create a UTM or a link in bio will track a click, and you have self-attribution at the checkout or lead. How reliable is any of that? It's not. But what you want it to do is amplify everything else you do. So one thing we haven't talked about in terms of how valuable this stuff can be is essentially on how valuable it is when you have a content vehicle that you can push like crazy, okay? When you have something like that, it does a couple of things. One, obviously you have a ton of video content, long form stuff. So let's say if you do a podcast, let's take a podcast as a prime example. It's one of my favorite places to start because I think it's the easiest type of content to make for those just starting out. You start with a podcast, you chat to someone for 30 to 60 minutes. They're an interesting person, they've got an awesome story, whatever it is. You can create mid-sized clips from that. So think Joe Rogan, Diary of a CEO, 5 to 20 minutes long, right? Those are your subsection clips. You can double down on the subjects that were brought up in that show. So you don't have to only have just the larger show. Then you have the short form clips you can bring from that. There's going to be, at least if you talk for an hour, at least 10 to 15 really good clips if you really pushed it from that. But what that does is that's all your video ecosystem that's covered, right? You've got that done. But then you can do something what I call the waterfall system, or the waterfall technique. So if you do this, you can then take the transcript from that write-up. Let's say it's two experts on AI chatting away. I now have an AI expert to chat through with, perfect, excellent, blah, 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 blah. I've got everything I need to do. I now have a full transcript of these two experts talking, and the same mid-sized clips I've created could be the same ones I use for topics for blogs on my website. So in 1 hour conversation, I've actually done my blogs for the month. Done, sorted. Right, you obviously want to jazz them up a little bit, proofread them, all that, add some nice media, make it official. It could be answering a specific question as well, so how you put your show together could end up informing your blog strategy. And then you go, hold on a minute, there's probably some good graphics here. So there's a promo graphic for the actual show itself. There's going to be some cool quote graphics you could pull from that show. But also the interesting information you cover can be translated into a really valuable carousel that you could swipe through. Right? So if you use the transcript well enough and you have a series of pre-approved templates, you could completely power your whole graphic design strategy around the video content you're doing. And you know it's fully approved. So you've done your blogs, your graphics, and your podcasts and video streams in an hour. And that's not all you can do. If you want to round up all that information, what a really interesting and informative roundup to put into an email newsletter. Now, I want you to think if a brand starts from ground zero, let's say they're a B2B firm doing X, Y, and Z. You start at ground zero doing that, but you consistently did that for over a year. You go from absolutely nothing to having a fairly sizable content ecosystem that builds up a loyal following over a yearly period. think about how impactful that is compared to, posting about Johnny's birthday. That's it. It's a completely different world. And no matter how big the brand is, they all ignore this. And it's what frustrates me. A lot of newer B2B firms are really getting in on this and doing very well. And especially B2B tech seems to have caught onto this very well. But I think it's something we absolutely need to pay attention to, because it's not going away. You need to have something that powers your brand. So what are you going to do? Do something. Create your own vehicle, right? And from that point, you're going to get to a really, really good spot. With the question in the chat, what's one thing you wish clients understood better about social strategy? Ooh. Okay, in terms of my wish list, would be timing and how long it takes to come to fruition when it comes to, how long does it really take to build a community? The real answer is it depends, but ultimately it's going to fall down to how well you double down on your content. So I'm not sure any other creatives have experienced this, but I'm going to go into it. In a traditional creative sense, if I'm in a creative agency, we want to come up with a new campaign angle pitch. We're going to go, okay, cool, here's the overall concept, here's what we want to achieve, here's the primary audience. We've created 3 creative routes for you to choose from. We've got safe as houses, probably not going to do anything, but it's probably what you asked for, it's the safest. A little bit riskier, but I'd prefer the other option. And then there's going to be balls to the wall, take a risk, get some attention, right? Every marketer on earth wants option 3, but they often get option 1 or 2, right? So this can actually massively impact a strategy. So I've had this with clients in the past where I'll propose things that I think will really push them forward, that are really ambitious, that still cost the same, but they choose the safer option, which then impacts their growth, and they didn't get the figures they were after. Now, that is what I wish they'd understand, that you have to take risks, either with personality, putting personnel up front, or actually allowing your leadership to take center stage as content creators in your business. So I wish that you understood the timelines it takes to grow a real community, the benefits that come with that on the latter end, which is going to be higher conversion rates, better viewership for completely free, better brand resonance and trust, and just being more of a household name if you want to really be beyond that. And your particular strategy will dictate what you can be known for. But in that sense, I wish they understood those, because if they did, it'd be this, because it's a different game. It's a different game you have to play. And once you start playing it, while no one else is, you have the chance to be first. And that can be really impactful, especially in something like law or accounting, to really take things to the next level, because I see them in the professional services route. I see it the most. I'll just stay in my lane, I'll stay professional, thanks. Why? I don't know, it's just what everyone else does. Makes every marketer like, because it's so simple, it makes my eyes burn. I'm like, please just do something. And there are some cool podcasters and content creators. Typically though, they come from the States first, and the UK has a general problem with this. We'll let the US take all of the glory, all of the new ideas, push for new stuff, and then eventually we'll trickle along and do something, half-assed compared to what they're doing. I hate it when we do that. I despise it. We have it's all going to go wrong type mentality sometimes when it comes to new stuff, especially on new tools, new techniques, new content approaches. I think we need to break as a society in general. Obviously, every nation has their societal problems, but in general, I wish we'd kind of stop. I wish we'd stop just relying on the Americans to prove something works and then do it ourselves. We need to start leading the way on something. And I think, especially live streaming, we have plenty of UK creators kicking ass on live streams. Like I said, Angry Ginge has been doing it for ages. A lot of the Sidemen do live streams. That there's a proven model in every content creator, for every business to build upon. It is a choice on whether we decide as businesses that it's our time to step up. If anyone's ever watched Gary Vee's content, it's non-stop what he talks about. He said the same thing for like the last 10 years. Like for a lot of us, it's probably if I check into his videos, it'll be rare that I'll see him say something that I haven't heard him say before. but he's gonna say, like, he's gotta keep saying it, and he conveys it in slightly different ways every time, for people asking the question in slightly different ways every time. But that, that's just what you got to do. And again, for just a warning for brands, you don't have to worry about saying the same thing over and over. You just don't, because it's going to be video. Specifically, the short form videos often serve to new audiences. So I think it's something, the last few, in terms of my data, I think it's at least 70% of Reels and TikToks will go to a new audience instead of your existing one. So yes, it presents one problem, because you want the people that are already following to engage and liking your stuff. But that means your short form content is literally the fishing rod that you can use to reel people in with, right? So it could be it could be a big change. It could be a really impactful change. And actually, if you can get in that mindset that that's what Reels are for, they're a distribution tool, then you realise that setting up the vehicles for gaining those new people is a no-brainer. So as long as you're in that right mindset, you're absolutely good. Shout out Carlton. I'll see you on Thursday, mate. Love that. And obviously, I've been chatting for almost an hour now, and I wanted to mainly test if I could, because starting a streaming career is not something I'm aiming to do. But what I do want to do is have a place where every Monday we can set up a conversation like this. I can promote it obviously a bit better this time to give some people some more notice, but essentially what I want to be able to do is just have a way that I can answer as many people's questions completely for free every Monday, just so we can all kind of lock in, get better at what we're doing, and just take things to the next level. I'll be covering social media news. I'll be covering top level theory like this. I do have certain presentations and talks as well that I give in person that I can actually do, through this tool as well. This is kind of like a rant version of the one I'd usually give about the future of podcasting. But actually, this could be a good chance for the next one maybe to be understanding native social. And that's more of a deep dive specifically on covering a lot of what we talked about today, what we need to think about. And then also how each platform is currently operating, an overview, and some top tips in terms of how to grow on those individual platforms, getting more into the minutiae of per platform and how to get things right. So if that sounds any good, let me know. Obviously, I'm going to be using this for clips left, right, and centre, which I always will be. But I suppose in general, I think I'm going to wrap today up, because I think we've done a solid hour there, solid hour of me rattling on, just staring at a camera, which is really hard to get used to. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Especially when I actually do start getting chatters as well, which I've got the 2 chat feeds up here, which is why whenever you see me look over here, I'm dealing with and looking at chat. And obviously both my accounts are fresh, but my one ask and promo for today is absolutely going to be subscribed to my new YouTube channel. It is going to be the home of everything that I do on here, and it is going to be filled to the brim with really useful stuff. So individual videos, live streams, podcasts, you name it. I'm also going to try and vlog my own journey as much as possible in terms of getting on the weight loss stuff, because trust me, I'm not very good at that. So once I do get a handle on it, I'm going to drop it in the comments for you guys to check out. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. But I shall love you and leave you, ladies and gentlemen. And if you have any questions, hit me up on the DMs, hit me up on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you happen to be. And I will see you lovely people